We're making sour cream coffee cake. This is a delicious recipe, and I think that you'll be super pleased once you know how easy it is to make. In our ingredients, you'll notice that I also have pictured 2 cups of made streusel, which you'll be making this week for other recipes. And then I also have some pre-made cinnamon sugar. Your recipe asks for specific amounts for your cinnamon sugar. We happen to have cinnamon sugar in bulk, so I just utilized about the same amount that's asked for in the recipe. Also, please notice that the amount that I'm using here is for a double recipe. The recipe that you're getting is going to be for one of those square tins that I'm using. And the recipe that I made in this video actually ended up being 2 of those. So don't worry, I know that there's 3 eggs pictured here, but you're going to beat up 1.5, and then you'll actually measure out how much you need in grams, etc. So your recipe is already adjusted so that it is a single recipe versus the double that I did. This recipe is creaming method. That's what we're learning this week. Creaming method. We are incorporating air into the fat and utilizing the sugar to be able to get that air as much as possible. The key with creaming is to try your best to see if you can get your ingredients more at a room temperature so that the creaming goes faster. My fat happened to be on the colder side because the room was very cold. It was about 60 degrees in the room. And so it ended up being cold and it took longer to cream, but it eventually got there. So now our butter and sugars are finally creamed, and I'm adding 1 egg at a time. And please make sure to scrape the bowl every time an egg is incorporated. If you do not scrape the bowl properly, all the way down to the bottom, then you'll notice that you'll have pockets of butter and sugar. And while that may sound delightful and delicious, it will affect your finished product and how it bakes. It'll have little areas where the cake will kind of sink, and you'll have little divots where the butter and sugar pockets have melted. So please ensure that you have scraped all the way down to that little dip in the bowl as well. Now, if you're doing this with the handheld mixer, you'll be able to see where the areas that you've missed. But if you're using a stand mixer like this, then that's the advice that I have for you as far as scraping. So we'll just add 1 more egg in here in a little bit. But I'm going to take this time to discuss, why is it called coffee cake? There's no coffee in it. No, but actually this cake tastes delicious to have with coffee or tea. Maybe it should be called coffee/tea cake. I'm not sure. The great thing about it, as with most of our recipes, is that you can customize the flavor profile. You can even put in some other mix-ins if you would like as well. So I made this cake during the holiday season, and instead of cinnamon sugar, I also tried to utilize pumpkin pie spice. It was absolutely delicious. And with the streusel topping, if you're making a streusel that has different flavor profile, different spices, you could do that too. If you don't want to do cinnamon, hey, you could just do vanilla. No problem. You can even fold in chocolate chips in here or other things as well. Okay, so our eggs are all incorporated properly, and now I'm going to alternate my dry ingredients and my wet ingredients. We do this alternation method so that we do not overmix our batter. As you've learned previously, overmixing with dry ingredients ends up with gummy, dense product. That's because the gluten has been overactivated. So doing it this way on a very slow speed, we're adding the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients alternating. We're ending with the dry ingredients. If you want to pre-mix your wet ingredients first, that's completely fine. I just happen to have my sour cream in a different bowl, but now I'm combining it all together. So here I go with some of the dry ingredients again. And I believe that it's 3 additions of dry and then 2 additions of wet. So you just do one after the other, and beginning and ending with dry ingredients. So once you've added all of your dry ingredients at the end, please be careful not to overmix this batter. You want to make sure you see, okay, when I have my dry ingredients started to disappear for the most part, and once it's about 95% disappeared, that's where you're going to stop your mixer. Because remember, once you take off your paddle, you can use your rubber spatula and fold in some of the rest, and that's fine. So I'm just scraping the bowl here, getting as much of that little bottom divot as I can, just in case there's anything stuck in there. I also like to use the spatula to clean up some of the stuff on the actual paddle as well. You'll see that there's some dry ingredients sitting on there, and sometimes there's pockets of butter and sugar on the actual paddle itself. So try to be as thorough as possible before you completely mix your batter up. Now that our batter is all finished, then we can decide which cake pan we're going to use. This recipe can do the 8x8 size, which is on the left, or the round 9-inch cake pan. Both of them are prepared just in case, but I wanted to show you both in case you wanted to see the different shapes. Typically a coffee cake is baked in a rectangular or a square, but like I mentioned before in other recipes, it's just a batter. You could bake it in any vessel, and that's fine. So I'm getting everything ready. I'm going to put half of my batter on the bottom of this pan, and then I will use an offset spatula to spread it as evenly as I possibly can so that I have a flat layer. The beauty of this coffee cake is that you have the cake on the bottom. In the middle you have this kind of uh, rolling hills kind of looks kind of like an ant hill as well, with the cinnamon sugar or spice mixture that you have, and then there's cake on top of that. The whole thing is topped with some really nice crunchy streusel topping. So what's there not to like? Now I'm done with my first layer, so I'm putting my cinnamon sugar amount here. This is equivalent to that half a cup that is in your recipe. So please make sure before you do this that the bottom layer of the cake is properly spread out with your offset spatula. So after I finish this layer, I'm going to just put the rest of the batter on top, and I'm just shaking it here to even it out. And just know that this second layer to spread out is just a little bit more difficult because you have that sugar in the middle. But don't worry, if you have a little bit of that sugar peeking through, I don't think anybody will mind. Now that I have both layers on with the sugar, cinnamon sugar in the middle, I can crumble up my streusel topping. This streusel topping really makes this dish. If you don't have it, well, I don't think that's really coffee cake if you don't have this beautiful, crunchy streusel layer. And don't be shy with the streusel as well. I put on here that you're going to be putting 2 cups of it. Use the 2 cups because you want that crunch. You want it to be able to bake into the batter and just be absolutely wonderful in the end. Okay, so I've baked this for, it was about 20 minutes at 350, and I want you to see that it's still real jiggly. And that means that the batter is not done yet. Even though it's beautifully caramelized and browned on top, there's raw batter in the middle. So please do not let it fool you. So I'm going to put it back in the oven and take it, or give it another 15 minutes and I'll check it again. So I'm checking it again with the skewer. And it's still raw batter. So you see how on the top it's really nice color, but the batter is still raw. So that's why you got to do all of your due diligence. Use the skewer, do as best you can. Finally, it's done. This took about 45 minutes, okay? But again, you know, your oven's different than mine. Your pan might be bigger, your pan might be smaller. So you got to really understand how to assess these things. Use the skewer test. Don't always look at just the color. So once you have let your cake cool completely, then you can give it a cut and you can see that the interior, it has those beautiful layers that I was talking about. The great thing about this coffee cake too is that you can actually freeze it. Just like most of our baked goods, you can freeze it after it's baked. You know, hopefully you've cut it up into servings or whatever. And if you would like to then have it later on, you can refresh it in a 325-degree oven for, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes. And it'll be good as new. It'll be delicious. Maybe even microwave it first. Give it a head start. I hope you enjoy this recipe. Good luck.